Canada appoints the first Indigenous person to the role of Governor General. While the Cowessess First Nations Historic Child Welfare Agreement with Canada, Roseanne Archibald elected first female National Chief of Assembly of First Nations. This is the Great White North Report. Alright, so a couple things happened this week. First off is that Mary Simon is now the Governor General appointee, and she is a Indigenous person from Northern Ontario, and obviously she's a woman, and she becomes the first woman Indigenous leader to hold the Governor General post. Now, my own thoughts on this is that Trudeau did this as a reaction to what's been going on with the residential school system coming to light. Well, obviously the Governor General post is a political thing, and he's made a political statement because A, she's an Indigenous person, and B, she's a woman. So it fits nicely with his progressive views. More private level, she is a strong woman. She's been in politics for a lot since, and she's also been the ambassador to Denmark. So she's not without her credentials. She is qualified to do it. There's no doubt about that. And again, Sinclair says she will be a strong voice for Indigenous people, but will the Liberals listen? Probably not. Justine does things just for his progressive views, and that's what for the broad spectrum that is the Liberal wing in Canadian society. So it is seen as a mark of hope, but raises questions about the Liberals' motivation for the decision. Ample reason to be suspicious of this appointment, particularly on a day in which the Liberal government is basically announcing a fall election. So this is a way to gather votes among the Indigenous people who make up about 5% of the Canadians' population. I believe that's 1.9 million, which is a number that actually surprised me. I didn't know it was that high. I thought it was more pegged around 3%. And this comes after they made two other remarkable announcements. The first was the Manitoba Métis Federation. The federal government signed a self-government agreement that sets out steps to formally recognize the Federation's jurisdiction over its citizens, elections, and operations of Métis government. It's basically doing what we already have with Quebec. Not the way to go. And then we'll get to the other one in a minute. So it's definitely an election-style effort being put in by the Liberals as they're looking for a fall election and hoping to gain a majority government, which would be another mistake. Trudeau is popular among the urban people. Now, Mary Simon, an Inuk leader from Nunavik in northern Quebec. Sorry, she's from northern Quebec. Like I said, she was a former ambassador to Denmark. Will replace Julie Payette as Governor General. Another woman she resigned from the post 5 months ago after a review found that she presided over a toxic and poisoned workplace at Rideau Hall. Wasn't the nicest person. Let's hope Mary Simon does better. She has an accomplished history of advocating Inuit rights and culture. So let's hope all the best for her. You know, the first Indigenous Governor General, I thought it's something that should happen. Whether it be a man or woman. It was something due, but it could have been done differently at a different time. Not when there's obviously an election coming up or when we have all this residential school stuff going on and the discoveries that are being made. It sounds more like an appeasement act by Trudeau. Lieutenant Obed, current president of ITK, said it's proud to see someone like Mary Simon, who is an unquestionable Indigenous leader in this country, has been for decades, recognized for her leadership and service. Fully agree with the leadership and service. She's done really well. I looked her up to find her credentials. That's the problem with Canadian politics. You really don't know who's who until they come to the spotlight. He doesn't believe Trudeau chose Simon because of recent findings, who was part of the advisory group that considers candidates for Governor General. Like Sinclair said, he's skeptical. The current Liberals haven't done very well with the strong Indigenous woman when it came to Jody Wilson-Raybould, who was kicked out of the caucus. So there's lots of reasons to be suspicious of Trudeau's choice and his motivations behind that. Now, the Cowessess First Nations, they signed an historic child welfare agreement with Canada and Saskatchewan. They now have complete decision-making power over his children and youth. Because I don't know anything about the child welfare system in Canada, because I've never been in it, and never wanted to put a kid in it. I know a little bit about it because I've seen enough. My son's gone to school with some foster kids. So the Cowessess First Nation reclaimed its inherent right to look after its own children with the signing of a coordination agreement with Saskatchewan and the federal government. It's the first of its kind. After years of our children being taken and separated from their families, culture, and ultimately their sense of themselves, we are one step closer to breaking one of the many generational curses that bind us. For the first time in 70 years, this jurisdiction will be recognized and resourced by the federal and provincial governments. No problem there. From coast to coast, the community is the final say on whether a Cowessess child is removed from their home as opposed to a judge or social services making that decision. Well, that's something that happens everywhere. A judge or a social service worker will make that call, even among a non-Indigenous person. it used to be up to the communities too. Now this is what I didn't know. Saskatchewan, 86% of the children in care are First Nations and 150 of them are from Cowas. It's time to receive the opportunity to come home and heal with their families on their own. Now my own experience with that is, I remember as a kid, there was a family in Belfast, 2 Indigenous kids for a little while. Not very long, 6 months. And then another one of my mom's friends, she's Indigenous. She was adopted by a family. And I still see her today and still talk to her. I actually work with her. I've known her for years. Just never thought to ask questions. I don't think this is the time to do it. So the community and family services will work to prevent children from going into care. I agree most of them should go with relatives, but this is a good step, I think. I think it's a good step for any culture, anywhere. The community should look after its own, whether it be Indigenous or not. So Indigenous Service Canada has received notices and requests to exercise the same jurisdiction from others, and that's fine. Something that should have happened years ago, I thought. So this is part of Bill C in 2019, and empowers Indigenous communities to reclaim jurisdiction over their child welfare system. And it's a response to the first 5 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which focuses on child welfare. This is something that's been going on under Harper. They've studied it. So this isn't something that's knee-jerk reaction. This is something that's been studied for years. But the announcement now comes on the heels of the residential schools discoveries. So you wonder about the timing. Is this being worked out fast as a result of that and the backlash that came with it? Next up we have Roseanne Archibald elected first female National Chief of Assembly of First Nations. So after 5 rounds of voting over a span of 2 days, the former Ontario Regional Chief Roseanne Archibald has been named the new National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, AFN. And she is the first woman elected to the role. Now this is a political position again. She is a member of the Tagamwa Nation, formerly New Post First Nation in Northern Ontario. She spent a 3-year term as the Ontario Regional Chief. And she was the first woman and youngest chief elected to the Tagamwa Nation. I'm butchering that, my apologies. When she was 23 in 1990. So she is very young. She's very obviously politically active. And let's hope she can all the best. So she's basically the liaison between the First Nations and the government. I'm not sure if she holds a seat in Parliament or the Senate. Actually, they should. Whoever is the chief of the Assembly of First Nations should also have a position on the Senate. That would make a lot of sense to me. And let's hope things work out for the best for her. So these are things that just happened all of a sudden. I know the election of the first chief was something that was going to happen, and obviously the welfare thing was already in the works. But the appointment of the Governor General was definitely something that was done for political reasons. And Trudeau's hoping none of this backfires and blows up in his face. He's trying to score brownie points with the Indigenous people in an upcoming election. So this is nothing more than political pandering, as far as I'm concerned. The timing is suspicious, that's all. This is something that should have been announced long before, like 5 months. How long does it take to find a Governor General? So the slowness of the Trudeau government. So obviously he was looking for a progressive candidate to fill that post. Well, I hope she's an independent-minded person and not a Trudeau lackey. Anyway, I would love to hear from the Indigenous Canadians, any Canadians out there. I want to know what you guys think about all this stuff. And leave comments below. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.